Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Scott Mann Podcast. Man, a really cool guest today. A guy I've been friends with for a lot of years and actually one of my story coaches. He coached me in my second TEDx talk in Cincinnati. He coached my dad, Rex Mann, the woodsman, when he gave his TEDx talk about saving the American chestnut tree in Youngstown, Ohio, shortly after Dad had been declared in remission from his first bout with cancer. So Michael's been around our family for a long time. I trust him implicitly. He's trained so many other speakers, Gold Star mom Holly Higgins, who recently gave a TED Talk in Columbiana, Billy Adams, who had 70% of his cerebellum removed when he was 5 years old because of a couple strokes. Like, Michael is just amazing as a story. He's MD, the story doctor, Michael Davis. His mission is to help leaders, managers, and sales professionals communicate with more confidence, impact, and influence. The passion is born from his own communication difficulties early in his career. When he was 6 years old, like humiliating embarrassment by a teacher that caused him never to get in front of people again. Little did he know he would. He discovered that public speaking is like riding a bike, swimming, or driving a car. It's a learnable skill. Once he discovered this secret, he became a voracious student of the craft. He took courses, studied some of the world's best speakers and storytellers, and he continues to study presentation and business storytelling skills, including how to be better on Zoom and other remote platforms. He's been hired by companies and organization leaders and managers and sales professionals and TEDx speakers to help them become more confident, impactful, and influential in how they communicate. And I'm telling you, this guy is the guy I go to if I have to give a high-impact talk. He's the one I'm going to bring into the room. So I know you're going to love hearing from him on the subject of the power of storytelling. So without any further ado, let's jump in here with Michael Davis. I'll see you on the other side. Welcome to the Scott Mann Podcast, where we connect like our lives depend on it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the rooftop. My guest, Michael Davis, the story doctor. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, my friend. Great to be here.
Yeah, you were saying so many podcasts you've done. This is your first one in studio.
Yeah. And if you could indulge me for just a moment, I woke up yesterday morning and I thought, Sarah Superbad Adams.
Yeah.
Gary Sinise, Stephen Pressfield, Kendall Haven, Tyler Gray, Ben and Jess Owen, Rex Mann, and Michael Davis.
Yeah, man.
One of those names is not well known.
Not true at all. Not true at all. Actually, man, I've been wanting to have you on for a long time. We've talked about this off and on. You and I have worked together a lot of years.
We have.
We've done a lot of story work together. So I'm super excited to have you in here and so we can riff. But, you know, getting back in studio to me with a podcast was essential because it's all about human connection, right? And the more that we can be in the presence of one another, the more impact we can have. Tell us a little bit about you and how you and I were talking about this at supper, how you got into storytelling.
I was a financial advisor, which you just
found out
today. Yeah, I was a financial advisor for 29 years.
Because all story coaches are.
Of course. That's right. That's our back.
Wouldn't you think?
The storytelling world is known for their great financial advisors.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was an advisor back in 1994.
Okay.
I wasn't doing a good job of attracting new clients. My boss pulls me into his office one day, and I'm sitting across from this guy's desk. Now, if you've ever had a boss, and in the military, I'm sure you had somebody like this, he gave off the vibe of a mafia don. He had slick back hair, high back chair, and he looked at me and said, you're doing a lousy job of getting us new clients. You disappoint me. So you're going to start giving retirement planning workshops to get new clients in here. And I'm thinking, what? Oh, I can't do that.
And why?
He did not know, nor did anyone else, that when I was 6 years old, my first grade teacher embarrassed me so badly in front of my classmates that I promised myself I would never stand in front of people again because that was terrible. And I did a really good job for 25 years of not doing that until he said, you're going to do this.
So that event that happened when you were in first grade was so profoundly embarrassing that you did not get in front of people again in any meaningful way for 25 years.
Absolutely.
You would rather become a financial advisor.
Right.
And advise people on their financial dreams than get in front of people and speak.
Absolutely.
or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Even
Wow.
though there were some successful advisors who were doing that.
Sure.
And I would go to meetings and I would see people on stage. And
What did you think when you saw that?
Well, there was a little voice in me that said, you should be doing that.
Really? Even then?
Yeah.
And then a larger voice that said what?
Why would anybody listen to you?
Yeah.
There was another voice I didn't realize until just last year that was behind me. I made this discovery quite accidentally, which is the ultimate story I told myself since we're into storytelling.
Yeah.
You want me to share that now?
Please,
okay.
yeah.
When I was 2 years old, my father left my mother and me, never to be seen again.
Right.
It turned out well for me because my mom got remarried and my dad is a super guy. I love my dad.
Yeah.
And what I didn't know at the time, though, was my father leaving imprinted a message on me. And last summer, I'm talking to my youngest son, Sean. And
Yeah.
he said, just out of the blue, hey, why do you think your father left you and your mom?
Hmm.
And without thinking, I said, I guess he just didn't think I was worth sticking around for.
Wow.
Oh my God, that's it. That's the answer I've been looking for. My entire adult life, Scott, I have had this roller coaster of success with career and financial.
Yeah.
I would get to a certain level, ready for a big breakthrough, and then I would stop succeeding. I wouldn't make the phone calls. I would sabotage it. And then I'd get to a low point, never to the point of bankruptcy or anything else, but just low point, and I would start back up. And this went over and over. And I kept asking myself, why do I do this? And when I said those 6 words, you're not worth sticking around for.
Wow.
It was like this piece of my puzzle of my life snapped into place and everything made sense.
You know, it's really interesting that you say that, man, because I know, well, we're right in it now, aren't we? We're storytelling. You know, the brain is a metaphorical pattern matching organ, according to Dr. Ivan Tyrrell. And I think it's Haven and others that say that the storytelling is a sense-making tool to answer the mandate that the brain has to make sense of things. And it has been for 100,000 years. So we're telling ourselves stories all the time about everything. It's not just the stories we hear. It's not just the stories we tell the outside world. It's the stories we tell ourselves, right? And a lot of those are narratives that were based on things that happened to us, and we tell them to try to keep us safe.
And here's the worst part. And we do a lot of, obviously, know Doc Diego very well, and he's helped me with this. It's the stories we don't even realize we're telling.
It's like subconscious.
That story, you're not worth sticking around for, impacted me in my dating life. And when I was a young man, I used to brag, I've never been dumped. And now I see that's nothing to be proud of, because there was a little voice in me saying, well, you should leave because they're going to leave because you're not worth sticking around for.
Wow.
Don't pick up the phone and make the call. You're not worth doing business with.
Yeah.
It's just over and over. And so what's fascinating, Scott, you got a thought?
No, I'm just thinking, go ahead. It's amazing.
It didn't happen overnight, because we talk about this in storytelling all the time. You don't get the insight and life is great the next day. But I started to notice, and I did this exercise where I compared the story to the counter to that story. I call it the doubt versus evidence exercise. It's in the new book. The doubt is the story. You're not worth sticking around for. And then I wrote down everybody in my life who countered that story. You and Monty are on that list.
Really?
It got to be hundreds of people. So when I look at, and the story pops up now, I look at the list and say, sorry, that's not true.
You know what I like about that, Michael, is that we talk all the time about resistance, Pressfield's resistance, right? That internal self-sabotage that gets between us and that higher version of ourselves that we aspire to be. And it manifests in all these different ways. What you're really saying here is that was a form of resistance, right?
Absolutely.
And you had to find a way to get really granular and specific on how resistance shows up in your life, which is so critical. And then you found a move to make when it does, which is the story, which is the counter narrative, the new pattern for the brain, because the brain works in patterns, is a new pattern, a new story to present the brain that's not that false narrative, right? It's not the old 8-track. It's not the old ABBA 8-track. Right. It's an MP4, right? It's new music for the brain.
Yeah, it's replacing that old. I once heard it in the old days of record, if you're old enough to remember records, it's scratching that record out and putting a new message on top of it.
By the way, I don't listen to ABBA.
It's already out there. Sorry, Scott. And they're not going to erase this part. Here's what's interesting. I set a goal for myself late last year after this experience. I want to start working with groups. I really think that's where my business is. And I do individual work still, but at the end of June, I'd already had my best year ever. And I attribute a lot of that to clearing the space because I know I'm worth doing business with. I have the proof.
Yeah.
And I got 3 group coaching clients in the first quarter.
Just because you addressed that piece of resistance and countered it with a different story.
I think that's a huge part of it, yeah.
So I threw you way off track here. You get directed to go into storytelling as a way to get more clients. What happened?
I got the message. I don't know if I've told you this earlier. I can't remember if I said it here. I went out and I gave some workshops. I come back 6 weeks later and my boss looks at me and says, I don't believe this. 3 workshops. Not one new client. You really suck at this.
Yeah.
He's a very loving kind of leader. So he said, fix this or you're finished. What do I do? Well,
how old were you at this time? That's a lot of pressure, man.
31.
Wow, you're young.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to get married and have a child. And so I found this group called Toastmasters.
Okay.
Which
a lot of people
are familiar with them. And you go there I went there to save my job.
Yeah. You're desperate.
Absolute desperation. I'm thinking I'll go 3 or 4 times and then I'll get back to it and forget the speaking thing. I found within 1 or 2 meetings, there's something here.
Yeah.
You've had that feeling where you go somewhere and it's like, I belong here. I couldn't even explain it. And I started to uncover myths. You don't have to be born speaker. You and I have talked about this. You went through the same journey. You weren't a born speaker.
No, not at all.
You're
and no class.
Good one now.
Well, thank you, but no formal training on it,
Not
really.
At all. So it started to destroy some of those myths about speaking I had, and the more I did it, the more confidence I got. But I did hit a wall at one point.
Yeah,
and I'd forgotten the first grade incident.
Right.
I had a really good mentor. Her name's Sandy, and she helped me uncover that story and said, you don't have to buy into that story. But it didn't completely get rid of it because it came back years later. But she helped me to get some confidence. What the resistance was for me was opening up my emotions. And that's why it didn't happen until last year that I had the great insight, you're not worth sticking around for.
That's amazing, man. And I've you coached me on my TED Talk, my second one.
Right.
You coached my father, who gave, in my opinion, one of the coolest TED Talks. I know I'm prejudiced, but it was just so from the heart and so authentic. And you coached him through that. I mean, he'd just come through cancer. The thought of you having anxiety and stage fright and all of these imposter type syndromes, because I have them, but I never imagined you having them because you are seemingly so confident and reassured and assuring when you're in front of people, not just for yourself, but for the people that you coach. I remember, you just kind of exude that safety, but that's just interesting that you're wrestling with that yourself.
Absolutely. You just said something I hadn't considered. One of the compliments I've gotten over the years is you're a really good listener.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, another piece of the puzzle, if I'm not a good if I'm a good listener because I understand what others are going through. I know that fear all too well.
Yeah, I feel that way too. And I know my dad and I talked about this. He was probably one of the best listeners I ever saw. And he would tell me it was because he was dealing with his own anxiety, and he found that if he listened, it grounded him.
Yeah.
And I think there's some truth in that. But I just think it's really cool that, you're one of the guys that I truly look up to as a speaker, as a storyteller, as a coach, and yet you dealt with anxiety, imposter syndrome, resistance, for first grade on, and had those inner narratives working through your mind as recently as last year.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so cool because, it's not cool for you probably, but it is cool in the sense that, there's all of these things that are available for us if we do this work. We find all these discoveries about ourselves and all these pivots and moves, and nothing is really set in stone.
No, it's not. And I think these things happen when they're supposed to.
Right.
There's part of me that says, I wish I would have gotten this insight sooner than from age 6 to the year before I'm eligible for Social Security. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But it happened when it was meant to.
So you did the Toastmasters but you kept going. I mean, like when I met you, I was offered the opportunity to work with you as a coach. We hit it off right away. Because for those of you who don't know, when you do a TEDx talk, typically, I don't know if it's everywhere, but typically you get a coach. Mm-hmm. Because a TED talk is kind of TEDx talk is kind of a different thing. And it's an audience that suffers no fools. And you really need to bring your A game as a storyteller, as a speaker. So they put a coach with you to help you get that idea with sharing and the delivery of it. And you were my coach. Mm-hmm. And, it was, you had already coached a lot of TED speakers at that point. So how did you move into that space?
I got to thank my sweetheart, Linda. She knew the passion I had for this when I was transitioning out of financial planning into coaching. And she kept telling me about this thing, TEDx. And she convinced me to go to one of the auditions in Cincinnati. And it was a freezing cold January night. And I'm in this part of town called Mount Adams, which is all hills. And I'm cussing up a storm going to this thing. Why am I doing this? I'm walking in snow. I'm going to fall and bust my ass. I go to this thing, and I couldn't believe the energy in here. I wasn't going to audition. I just wanted to see what it's about. I go in and I find the organizer, Jamie, who you know because of your experience. I say, I'm a speech coach. Her first words to me, I need you. I'm like,
wow, that's so awesome.
I said, that's my audition, huh? And it was one of those serendipitous
you've worked with so many people. And I mean, dear friends of mine, you've worked with my dad, Rex. For those of you who've seen Billy Adams' TED Talk, you should watch it. We'll try to put it in the show notes. Absolutely. 70% of his cerebellum removed. Michael worked closely with him from strokes when he was like age 5. Holly Higgins, Gold Star mom. I mean, you've worked with a lot of speakers, coaches. What was was there a choice? Like, did it come down to financial advisory or speaking? Like, what happened? Was there a crossroads there when you decided to go one or the other?
Well, I first got The Voice in 1988 while I was sitting listening to a speaker in not far from here, the Sheraton Sand Key in Clearwater, Florida.
That's just down the road.
I'm in a room with 350 other financial advisors, brand new to the industry. There's a guy at the front of the room. His name's James Boren. He's a professional double speaker. You ever heard of that?
No, I don't know what that is.
It's somebody who gets up and speaks, but they're not saying it's double talk. He is supposedly a political advisor. Scott, at one point, I looked around the room. There were 350 people in that room with tears running down our faces. Not because we were crying. We were laughing hysterically. I'll never forget that feeling. And a little voice said to me, you should be doing that.
Okay.
And the voice of resistance, thank you, Stephen Pressfield. It was so strong.
Right.
You can't do that. Why would anybody listen to you?
Right. What do you have to say? Yeah.
And that voice kept coming back. So the seed was planted in 1988. And anytime I heard a speaker, it came back. I shut it down. And then finally, I forced to go deal with it because of my job.
Yeah.
I knew in my gut that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, but it took me 24 years. Well, actually, 26 years from the time I got the voice that said, do this, to starting a business of coaching.
Yeah.
And in 2018, I'm 55 years old, I decided.
55.
I said,
that's so cool.
I got to make a decision.
Yeah.
Am I going to look back whenever that is and say I should have done that? So I jumped and I cut all my ties to the financial business. I didn't want any safety net.
You burned the boats at 55 years old after how many years as a financial advisor?
29.
Babe, how old was I when I started, when I retired and I started speaking? Was it 43? 42 or 43. So I was, younger than you, but not a ton. And so I just have such a deep appreciation for that's a big move, man. But you loved it that much. You felt that, but yet at the same time, you're terrified, I'm sure, making that decision.
Terrified. Yeah, absolutely. You didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know, so I just did it.
One of my acting coaches, Carl Bury, says that vulnerability is not knowing what's going to happen next and stepping into the arena anyway.
I did.
Yeah.
There was a part of me, I don't know what it was, that said, you're going to be okay.
Right.
Who would have known 2 years later a pandemic would hit? But that, from a business standpoint, was an advantage for me.
I want to hit that, but if we could, because you're a member of the National Speaker Association. I think you're on the board.
The Ohio chapter.
Ohio chapter.
Yeah.
You've spent a lot of time there. You've coached a lot of high-end speakers. You speak yourself. You've written authoritatively on speaking, storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about, because I'm not picking on financial advisors, but I coach some, and some of them are amazing storytellers, but they've become that. I've met very few that are just doing it naturally.
Right. There's
a few, but I found that. And it's not just financial advisors. It's a lot in the transactional world, right? Whether it's IT, some forms of healthcare, banking. But this notion, this left brain dominant reliance on facts and data and PowerPoint. And to me, the financial advisory world seems just so overly indexed on that. And I just wonder, what have been your insights with that in terms of how financial advisors communicate today with their clients as opposed to like the old school approach to storytelling?
I've been out of the industry for 7 years. I find they're still pulling up graphs and charts and trying to wow you with numbers they don't understand. They have such tunnel vision that they are impressed by numbers, so they think that's how people buy. I got 12.8% last year, so this is why you should buy. It's like they don't sit on the other side of the desk.
Yeah.
As a coach, I frequently tell my speakers, sit in the audience. You're wonderful at doing this in your prep work. Sit in the fourth row and see what that looks like.
Yeah, the pictures in their heads, right?
Yeah.
And, for example, if you think about typically the person you're talking to as a financial advisor, I mean, you're advising them on their dreams, right? The commodity is it's dreams. And that's a right hemisphere kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And that's where I think there's like this massive dissonance. And not just with financial advisors, but anything that's transactional in nature. And we've so over-indexed on data and numbers and PowerPoint and spreadsheets. And, we know that the brain works in metaphor. The brain tells itself a story first. It doesn't use data. So when you just inundate people with data, it actually pushes them away.
It absolutely does. And one of the big challenges I see is advisors, salespeople do not take the time to truly understand the problem. What is the problem the other person's going through?
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a really good point.
It can't be, and we have to dig deep. You talked this weekend about A More Beautiful Question. What a wonderful book.
This weekend we did an Own Every Room event where we go out and kind of the rural countryside and we work with leaders on human connection. Go ahead.
Well, it's all about digging for what's the real issue. People come in, and one of the challenges we all have, especially in sales, when I was an advisor, people would come in when I was a young planner and they would say, well, I want to retire. Well, immediately I went into solution mode. At 28 years old, I had a definition of retirement that was very different from the people sitting across from me who were 55, but I didn't know what it was.
You don't even see the pictures in their head.
I didn't take the time.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, one of the first rules of authentic engagement is see the pictures in the head of the other party. What's their pain? What's their goals? Usually starting with pain.
Absolutely.
Because people are living in pain, right? They're worried about, am I going to have enough to retire? Am I going to have enough to pay for my daughter's wedding? Are my wife and I going to be able to travel like we've always wanted to? Am I going to have a stroke before I'm actually able to fulfill on, my bucket list, right? I mean, these are the things that are on people's minds, but yet we're showing them graphs and data, and it's almost off-putting.
Oh, it really is. I really shudder to think some of the meetings I put people through when I was first in the business, they were 3 hours long, and it was data, information. Let me tell you how great we are. What I didn't understand is define the problem. All right, Mr. and Mrs. Mann, you want to retire. What does that look like to you?
Yeah, thoughtful, open-ended questions, right? Like Warren Berger talks about questionology, questions that start with what and how, so that you can see the pictures in the head of the other party.
That's it. What does that look like? Define your perfect day. And they start creating what I call mental movie. And then you bring them to, all right, why are you sitting here? Clearly there's some issue.
Yeah.
That you feel you're not on that path. Where do you see it if you don't make any changes?
Do you think it's because it takes longer to get there? Is that what it is? I mean, because it does when you're asking questions like that, but the roadmap there is so much more certain. And again, you're getting a sense of what the other, going back to your point on listening, I believe storytellers are the best listeners, right?
Absolutely.
Because 2/3 of every engagement, yeah, it's narrative exchange, but 2/3 of it is the stories we ask to hear, to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's slowing it down, getting the pictures in their heads, but not just the picture, but the emotion behind them.
Oh, man.
And like when I teach people questioning skills, keep asking questions until you start hearing emotional words. I'm scared. I'm nervous. I'm afraid. Now you've got the hot buttons.
Yeah. Well, you and I are both geeks on storytelling.
Absolutely.
Kendall Haven, I love his book, Story Proof, but one of the things he says is that to authentically influence, you have to gain and hold attention, and you have to emotionally resonate with the other party. That is what seems to be missing in a lot of the arenas where people are trying to influence clients, prospects, donors, their kids, is that there's no emotional resonance, right? It's just, you're just speaking at them with facts and data and logic. And that's really not where influence lives. There's also an emotional point of view, which really only story can achieve.
Story and listening, and you used the word transactional before, and the corporate world, and I'm going to speak for the financial world. There's a lot of double speak.
Yeah,
we're
jargon.
Here for the client, jargon. We're here we stand out. We care about you. What I saw, and this is not one company, this is many, is all right. Go sell this product. We need to move this many of this and this and this, and it's just transactional.
Dude, can I interrupt for a second?
Absolutely.
So I just was in on a. There's a merger going on that I'm working with, and I'm just going to leave the company out of it, but it's a big one. Mm-hmm. And the individual that was talking about the merger, and like you had both parties on, was talking about it, and there was so much jargon and just acronyms, and there was no emotional resonance. And in a merger, man, somebody's hurting. Somebody's hurting, and everybody's worried. Mm-hmm. But depending on who's merging with who or who's acquiring who, people are getting fired, laid off, worried about getting laid off. Jobs are getting cut. I mean, it's straight up scarcity. Mm-hmm. And there was zero emotional resonance in it. None. And I see it everywhere, right? And I see senior leaders doing this. And if you know that you have to emotionally resonate with the other party to influence them, why aren't we doing it?
A couple thoughts on that. Number one, there's an example that you have used in the workshops since I've known you, and I share this with many people, is the person sitting in the fourth row is thinking, Bob got fired last year. I'm next.
Yeah.
So we don't put ourselves in that
Nope.
audience. The other is influence. The word influence, we don't have a clear definition of it. Most people, still old school, influence means, Scott, you be quiet, I'm going to talk.
It's coercive.
And coercive, and I'm going to convince you against your will. That's never worked.
Yeah.
But we are in a transactional, get it done society. Yeah. And I think your work in Afghanistan and overseas, you saw cultures that know how to negotiate by slowing it down and just waiting out the Americans.
100%. It was pervasive.
We're too impatient, and if you are you willing to slow the process down? I tell this to clients all the time. Slow it down to speed it up. I promise you, if you just slow it down so people can walk away thinking, that's Scott Mann. He gets me.
Yeah.
He understands
me. And that is, the other term I use for storytelling is narrative competence. Yeah. The use of purposeful storytelling, metaphor, and framing in real time to meet your goals. Like what we're talking about here. It doesn't necessarily have to be, a pitch. I just looked up influence. I just randomly typed it in. The capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior, or someone or something on the effect itself, right? The capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone or something. Nothing in there about coercion or manipulation, right? But you're right. I mean, words matter, and it's what we tend to think about. But I think this is where it's so important to kind of get back to the basics on storytelling. And so thank you for giving me some insights on the left brain stuff and financial advisors and others. In your And it's pervasive. A lot of people struggle with storytelling. They're not using it to their advantage. They're leaving social capital on the table. How do you think about a story? If you were going to give a definition of a story or explain a story to someone, what would you tell them?
It is the narrative about a relatable main character who is living his or her everyday life, and then all of a sudden gets cast out of that by some challenge.
Yeah.
Which creates a new goal in them. Sometimes it's just to get back to the way life was.
Right.
And they go through this series of events and they get further and further away from the goal to the point where it feels like all is lost.
Yeah.
And then another character steps in, a guide, could be a person, could be a dog, could be an inanimate object that gives new wisdom that enables that person to take new, uncomfortable action that leads to an eventual succeeding of the achieving the goal, overcoming the challenge, and then taking the wisdom from that back, because they'll never go back to the old life.
Right.
They can never see life the same way after this journey, but gaining the wisdom of that experience.
That's really awesome. And there's all these, I've heard it as the transfer of imagery between humans. Haven has a good definition. I think he calls it a character-based narration of a character trying to overcome obstacles to achieve an important goal, which is essentially what you said. And the brain uses story to make sense of things. Like, it tells itself a story. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see? Because you work with a lot of executives, you work with a lot of leaders who communicate. What are some of the biggest mistakes? Set story aside if you want, but like what are the big mistakes that people are making in how they communicate with others?
Giving reports.
What do you mean?
I'm going to give you a lot of facts. Here's what happened. This is when it happened. Here's how it happened. Here's the impact. I talk about that with the story abs concept. Is the word "and" is an important part of setting up a story. But when the whole story is this happened and that happened and it's just facts, there's no emotional connection.
Let's just go right into that acronym, because the acronym is ABS, ABS. And a lot of time, like we're talking about narrative competence, right? Mm-hmm. People think storytelling and they think either reading to your kid at bedtime or some fictional thing or some kind of soft kumbaya skill, right, or speaking from the stage like a TED Talk. But the reality is, the brain uses story to make sense of the world, and it's doing it all the time. And, what I said earlier in the workshop was, if that's true and the brain uses storytelling for everything, right, then you can call it a pitch deck, you can call it a slideshow, you can call it a deck, a presentation. At the end of the day, it's all storytelling.
Yes,
and you either do it well or you do it badly. Yeah. Right? And so in real time, if you're talking about a client that was succeeded and you're talking to a prospect about it, you can use this approach that you have, this ABS approach, instead of just reporting with and it's just this endless diatribe of facts. Right. You can actually very quickly give this sequence that takes us through a story that makes sense of what happened. Can you share that?
Absolutely. And I wish I had invented this. I hadn't. I got the idea from a man named Randy Olson, who is a former marine biologist turned movie maker. He got it from Hollywood. Okay. The concept is the words and, but, and so. Okay. And you can interchange some words, but the word and is the setup. This is the everyday life of the main character. This is where we give a quick insight. Here's Scott, and he's 14 years old, and he's sitting in the soda shop, and in walks Mark, the Green Beret. Right. Quick setup. Where most people falter is it becomes and. It becomes an AAA story. Yeah. We need a but in there. Now, this is the most important word in storytelling. You can use a variation, however, until, on the other hand. But the word but sends us into an emotional part of the story. Right. Now, we talked about this today at the event. In everyday conversation, if we use the word but, it discounts everything we said before. If I walked in here and said, oh, Scott, this wall is phenomenal, love the flag, but everything I just said before, you're like, well, what's he going to rip me on this? Yeah. In storytelling, it's just the opposite. It activates the brain because the brain says, oh, something's about to change. Right. And that sends us into conflict. And they're
struggle.
Very struggle.
No struggle, no story.
It's exactly right. And that has to be in there. That's why.
Yeah.
And we want to get to the but as soon as possible.
Right.
Now, we can't stay in the conflict. Eventually, we have to resolve it or else people walk away upset with us. So we resolve the conflict, and then we share the lesson learned.
Right.
That's ABS. Now, it's not as simple as it sounds, but that is the core that Dr. Haven's 9 elements lay on top of, the hero's journey all
framework.
lay on top of that.
Yeah, and so it's just a really simple way. Like if you had a PowerPoint presentation, you had to lay out something to the boss, you could actually just write that on a whiteboard,
Yep.
you know, and look at your deck or whatever you're doing, and just the setup,
Yep.
and with those in there, and then, but this is where you introduce the problem set,
Absolutely. That's
right?
it.
And then you frame the problem,
Yep.
and then
So here's
right,
our solution.
that's the solution. That's the resolution. That's how you changed, what you learned,
Right.
where you are today, right? And if it just follows that even in a loose way, that's a story.
You're starting to tell a meaningful story.
Yes.
Now, where I think what really connected with me is when I put this together is Kendall Haven's 9 laid
Yeah.
right on top of it.
Yeah,
The first part, the and, the but, there's like 5 or 6 of his key components go right in, and it just follows the way the brain loves to consume story.
yeah. Because the brain does. It looks for certain elements in a story. It looks for characters and character traits, and it looks for the goals of the character, and it looks for the motives, why they want the goal.
Right.
It looks for struggle, right? Everything from risk and consequences to obstacles. And then it looks for resolution.
Also looks for stakes, which
Oh, yeah.
I think is the most important part.
Yeah, what's at
because
stake?
If we don't show,
Why does it matter?
Yeah, why does it matter?
Yeah, what's the risk of failure, and what happens if you do? Typically, are the best way to look at
Exactly.
stakes.
And that's all in that structure.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Okay? So COVID hit. You were talking about you were doing a lot of engagement, storytelling work, and then COVID hit, and then I know for us, for Monty and me, our business went to shit.
Yeah.
Like all the keynotes ended, the workshops ended, and we were relegated to in this office doing remote keynotes. You were the same way, and remote in coaching, right?
Yeah, here's what happened. In 2017, one of my mentors, who I do work for his group, he got me on the phone one day and said, "You're going to start hosting my virtual webinars or my virtual workshops." I said, "Okay." He said, "You're going to use this tool called Zoom."
This is in
2017. I said, "What's
Wow.
that?" So
Okay.
he, in retrospect, he saw something I didn't. I said, "I'm not going to do that." And it wasn't because I didn't want to. I was afraid I would mess up his brand. I didn't want to embarrass him. He said, "You're going to do this and you're going to get good at it." Now that's faith. So the first night, it's on a Wednesday night, I go, and everything that I predicted would go wrong went wrong.
Yeah.
It was a disaster.
Yeah.
And I called him up and I was kind of proud of myself. I said, "I tried to tell you I couldn't do it." He said, "You'll do better next week." And I thought, I'm stuck. Well, I just kept getting up and doing it and making mistakes. And then I'd go look at YouTube videos. And over time, I got pretty good at it. And then COVID hit and I knew I was in the right place, because I'd been listening to people for a year or two saying, "Well, I could never talk to people
I've watched
virtually."
you help so many people and it's terrible. I mean, I was giving a talk at a bank not that long ago, and I asked the junior associates, these are the younger folks in a lot of cases, and I said, on average, how many Zoom calls do you all do a day? You know what they told me? 13. 13 Zoom calls a day. And some of them were saying they don't even have time to go to the bathroom. It's so bad. And that people are on the calls. They drop their cameras. They're not even watching. They're checking their emails and all this other shit. Like it's like a bad Monty Python skit, you know? What do you see in terms of remote? Because everybody gives me this little boy whistling in the dark thing that Zoom's great. I get it. I understand that we're in a new world and there's a hybrid demand. We use it. But there's some stuff going on that's not good. Like, what are you seeing as some of the pitfalls of remote comms that are out there right now that we really need to take stock of?
You talk about this a lot, disengagement. And this is the fault of leadership. They're
Right.
not checking in on these calls. A good leader would get on a call anonymously and see what's going on.
Yeah, walk the halls virtually, right?
That's exactly
Yeah.
it. And then take a look and say, why is this?
Yeah.
Don't blame the people turning the cameras off. You're asking them.
But I see some of the leaders engaging in this shit too.
Absolutely.
It's just, I don't know if it's just because they're just inundated and they're tired, or just it's become normalized. I don't know. Maybe both.
I think it's both. We've become so transactional. Just get it done. I've got a to-do list. I've just got to check this out. It's checklist leadership. I've got a client who has a whole speech called checklist leadership. It's really good. Until somebody's willing to sit back and maybe come to a workshop like we just did, just to get a different perspective, I don't know how it's going to stop. It
just keeps getting more and more disconnected and disengaged, as you said, and disembodied.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that strikes me is I gave a talk the other day on an acquisition. So again, this is a tough environment, right? There wasn't one effing screen up with a human on it. I'm literally speaking to these black boxes, right, about human connection.
Yeah. And I'll bet you some of those boxes were AI chatbots.
Probably, you know.
It's like,
and it's just fascinating and terrifying all at the same time. I also think on the Zoom calls and Teams that we could do a little bit more to check in with each other in the beginning, right? It's just right to the agenda, and I know time is short, but again, you got to gain and hold attention, and you've got to emotionally resonate with the other party if you're going to influence, and that includes two-dimensional remote comms. Yeah. If you don't check in with one another, how do you even resonate?
It's hard. And I have a group that I was doing some work with, and we were starting to have this problem. We were meeting at lunch for their team. And I was sitting there one day, and I thought, we need to gamify this. Okay. So I got with the organizer and said, the next meeting, we're going to gamify this. And we did, and we had a lot more engagement. But you have to do check-ins. You can't just be a talking head, and you can't hide behind screens. You got to change it up all the time.
You do. It really has. You got to try to make it and check in with people and ask them what their thoughts are. I personally think this notion of dropping your screen, to me, if you're going to do that, then do an effing phone call. Do a conference call, right? Because if you drop your screen, I mean, you've voluntarily checked out, right? Yeah. You've said, this call is not important enough for me to look at you. Yeah. And I just think we're going down a pathway here. We're normalizing some stupid shit. It makes no sense in terms of human connection at all. It doesn't elicit reciprocity. It doesn't elicit trust. It actually goes the other way. And if you're the one presenting and you have, leadership and engagement is the management of energy, right? Yours and those around you, according to James Clausen. When you're looking at a camera, like we are right now, you've got to bring all the energy. Now, you and I can feed off each other,
absolutely,
right? But if you're presenting, you have to bring all the energy. The only way that you don't is if you've got people looking back at you. And it's not the same as a live audience, but at least you're getting feedback.
Yeah.
Whereas the black screens, man, you're putting all the onus on the presenter, and you're really setting them up for failure.
It's really hard. And I think an important question that companies need to start asking is, does this need to be Zoom? I don't hear people asking that question. And most of the time, the answer is no. We already know we're over-meetinged, if that's even a word. But
that's interesting because for a long time, it's like, why can't we do this on Zoom?
Right.
Right? Because it was COVID and everything. Why can't we just do this on Zoom? And then after the pandemic, it was, well, why can't we do this remote? Well, because it sucks and no one's listening to each other.
That's right.
So to your point, why does this have to be Zoom? Why can't we do this in person? Is that what you're saying? Or not do it at all? Or a phone call. Okay.
Or could we put it on a PDF, which is you and I see too many presentations that are just and just put it in a PDF, send it to me, and make sure I have read it by tomorrow at 5.
Yeah, I just think the remote argument that people make so passionately would be a lot stronger if they would turn their fucking screens on. I'm sorry, but it's so hard for me to process that argument. Like, seriously.
Oh, I agree,
when your
100%.
screen is off and you're checking your email.
We know they're not paying attention.
No.
Because we both know that it's impossible to do two things at
Humans
once.
can't multitask.
No, we cannot. It's a myth. It's been proven to be a myth. But that's what the screen is telling me.
I am going to have a lot of people hating me from this one, pal.
That's okay. That's okay. Hey, as we both know, if some of the people aren't pissed off, we're not trying.
I guess so. All right. So you work with a lot of folks that want to tell their story, as do I, which I love. It's my favorite thing. You have this thing called the Story Power Trio.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Yeah. Last year, I was on LinkedIn because that's my main social media
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, Scott, there are a lot of people talking about storytelling today.
There are.
A lot of them talking about frameworks and structure, and that's important.
It is.
What can I do to be different and stand out? So I started thinking actually about a lot of talks I've had with Doc Diego.
Yeah.
And just going through work with you, you've given me so many insights into storytelling. And I started thinking, okay.
He was a guest on here too.
Yeah, I heard that one.
Yeah, did you?
He's always fascinating. Yeah. I started thinking, okay, if I work hard to put together this story, what's one of the challenges? And one of the challenges is, what if I don't know the story going on in their minds? Can they hear my story that I've worked so hard to put together? I don't hear too many coaches talking about that. And then I had the conversation with Sean, and I thought, oh, what about the story we're telling ourselves? And I realized that's the Power Trio. I'm an old rock fan, right? Power Trio, Rush and Triumph and ZZ Top. So I thought, the Power Trio, I like the concept. And it's this. Number one story, we must be clear on the story we're telling ourselves.
Yeah. Okay.
If I'm going on stage and I've worked hard, I've structured and practiced and done everything that you and I teach.
Yeah.
But inside me is a little silent voice saying, you're not worth sticking around for. That energy is brought to the stage. And I used to be very good at looking polished.
Yeah.
Very polished. Hair was good, suit pressed, and I used to take a lot of pride in that. And then one day I was cleaning my office and I had a can of Endust and I'm spraying and I looked at the polish of the can and I thought, I'll be damned. Nothing sticks to polish. And I thought, my message isn't sticking. They remember what I look like, which is nice. Like, not really. It was all about me. And that was a story I was telling myself. So you got to, first of all, change what's the story you're telling yourself. And you got to dig. Sometimes it won't be obvious. It'll come out in a conversation with your child. Get that one straight. Then go figure out what are they thinking. This is something you're a master at. You do this in preparation. You go into the room before you're taking every perspective.
I obsess over it.
I know you do.
I've got to where I obsess. Not what they're feeling is what I try to go to even more than what they're thinking.
Yeah. What do they feel? What's
their emotional point of view.
And when you're speaking to a group, it's not always easy as in a one-on-one. I can ask you a lot of questions, but you can do some homework ahead of time. Find out, has anything happened since you hired me to come in here? What happened recently? Was there, you're talking about a merger of two companies. Well, things happen at the last minute.
Yeah.
But you can ask questions during your presentation, during your story. But you got to know what they're thinking because they may be thinking about, God, it's hot in here. What time's lunch?
Yeah.
Oh my God, are we getting together with the Johnsons this weekend? We've got to break that trance fast. As you point out, we have just a few seconds.
Yeah.
And that's why we cannot start our stories with, wow, it is so good to be here.
Yeah, welcome everybody. Bathrooms are over here to the left.
Right.
I'm really.
That's right.
They're
Coffee's
gone.
over there.
They're gone, man. Phones are out.
Absolutely, the phones are out. So we've got to know that story.
Yep.
Once we're clear on our own story, is what's in our head, and then theirs, now we're ready to share the message we've worked so hard on.
Yep.
It has to be in that order, and that's the trio. That's
really good,
inspired
Michael.
A new keynote, a workshop, the
Anything.
The book's coming out. It inspired all that's coming out soon.
That's great. And that's even for a meeting with a client.
Yeah.
You know, or one-on-one, or even your teenager, right? I mean, it's any high-stakes engagement, what we're talking about here. You know, it's not just from the stage, I guess is what I'm
absolutely.
saying.
And it takes away trying to be influential. A byproduct of this is influence. But if I try to be influential with my kids or my granddaughter, I'm figuratively pointing the finger and saying, this is how it is versus what's going on with you.
Well, it kind of maps onto the storyteller's triangle of like, if you're the teller or the presenter in a presentation to the boss, you have responsibilities of relationship to yourself,
right?
Relationship to your story or your content and a relationship to the audience. Like that's it. And then the audience has a relationship to your story. They get to decide if they buy what you're selling, right?
Absolutely.
You don't get to dictate that or, prescribe that. You just gotta really try to focus on your story, them, and yourself. And let the rest take care of itself.
I think Lippmann's triangle was part of the influence of the trio. It was probably back there.
I love it. I think it maps on brilliantly, man. It's really smart.
What you just said is so important because we went through this weekend with some of the storytellers we're working with, is that I want everybody to like my story. And it's like, first of all, every room you walk into, somebody's not going to like you for whatever reason. You're a male, you're a female, you're tall, you're black, you're white, you're Asian. They're going to have a reason. You can't control that. And if you're speaking from the heart and you're speaking authentically, that's all you can do. And then to your point, it's up to them to decide.
It's up to them. But you have to be able to speak authentically. If you can't and you feel like you can't or you're not, then it's just a waste of time.
It is.
It's a speech.
And
you know what I mean?
It's transactional.
It's just transactional. It's you're thin slicing. Again, something that I've found that is super helpful is just obsessively focus on what the audience is feeling. I think it's the one thing you can obsess over prior to speaking or engaging is what's on their mind. What are they thinking about? Because it's selfless. Mm-hmm. So we can obsess over that. Versus, oh man, I hope I don't screw up. Oh man, I hope they like it. Oh man, I hope, I get what I need. Because we can't control any of that. None of that. But we can control how we view and connect with the pictures in their heads and what's on their mind and what's on their heart. We can control that. We can control our relationship to that and really spend our energy on that. And I found that even when I'm super nervous, which is a lot, if I just think about in the final minutes before I go on, if even not the final hours, if I'm just obsessing over what's on their heart, I walk out much more connected to them and like ready to go.
And it flows off of you. And
it does.
There are several questions I ask before I speak, and you've given me one of those is, what do they need from me?
What do they need?
Not, what do I need to get out of this? Why am I doing this? And I'm going to get paid really well is not a good reason. It's like, what do they need? What can I give them? And
especially with people that we care about, like our kids and our spouse, we never ask that question.
We rarely do.
We really don't. I don't ask it enough. Okay. What makes a good TED Talk? What do you think? A lot of people want to do TED Talks. What makes a really powerful TED Talk, a memorable TED Talk, or a keynote?
It's having a fresh perspective.
Yep.
On an idea. There are very few new ideas out there. But let's take our friend Holly.
Yeah. Gold Star Mom, who went out with an idea that grief became her ally. Yeah.
After losing her dear son, Danny. Yeah. And going through 7 years of hell, not knowing what to do, and turning that around because of a broken cup.
Yeah.
And that's all we're going to tell you. You have to go watch the video.
Another person in our nonprofit is Carrie, and she has childhood trauma. She went on to she's an Air Force spouse. She lost her husband to suicide. She experienced severe PTS in her job as a crime scene investigator. But she's figured out that, much like Tyler Gray talks about, it was a lot of childhood trauma, but the journey to figure all that out and then to put that into the service of others, man, is really tough.
Well, that's it. And it's the one asset that you and I and Monty and everyone else has is our experience.
Your lived experience.
In the marketplace, if you're a financial planner, it doesn't matter what your product or service is, somebody can beat you on price, quality, delivery time. They can't match your story because that's the only one you have.
It's so good. And this is what I try to tell veterans and first responders, really anyone who's, and young people too. Like one of my favorite individuals is this kid, Bubba, who was best buddies with my son, Cooper. He was at the event.
Yeah.
And he was a D1 athlete, and he almost died on the table for a routine Tommy John surgery, And I call him a kid, he's in his 20s, but what he learned about himself and about the world and the way he shares his struggle from his childhood. I mean, it's so damn profound. And I've told him, I'm like, dude, you've got more wisdom in your little finger than most people have in their bodies because of your lived experience. And it doesn't have to be epic. It doesn't have to be traumatic. It doesn't have to be, it just needs to be personal.
That's it.
You know, what's personal is universal.
And what's so fascinating about that, one of the first events I worked with you, Chris Vetzel told the story of running over an IED and being buried. I was never in the military.
Yeah.
I never served. And in one moment in his story, he connected with me on a deep level. And that's when he asked the question, am I dying?
Yeah.
2 years before being at that event, I was laying in bed after a routine prostate biopsy. And I started to hyperventilate and I started to, I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
Something was desperately wrong and I didn't know what it was. And I had the thought, am I dying? And
you immediately connected to Chris's story. That's called narrative transportation, right? Exactly. And that's where we autobiographically listen and we make sense of our own lived experience and the safety of someone else's story. Absolutely. It's like the most generous thing we can do. Yeah. And it's available to all of us, but yet we spend so much time prejudging our own stuff, as you talked about, which takes me to this one. You know, there's 3 primary story myths that I talk a lot about that we tell ourselves all the time about why we shouldn't tell our story. I'm going to get your take on them.
Sure. 1,
I don't have a story. What do you say to that?
If you're alive, you have stories.
Thousands.
Make it to adult. If you're a parent, you've got. If you're married, you have stories. The problem is we've defined story from a comparison standpoint.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a Green Beret. How could I possibly have a story?
Which takes me to number 2. My story isn't as good as hers.
That's right. We get into the comparison game. We saw that this weekend, and we changed their thought process.
One young lady was in tears because she said, I don't have a story of trauma or deep grief. And I said, that's great. Good for you. I mean, that's wonderful. Yeah. But I guarantee you have stories of pivotal moments in your life. And we started to just go that route, just a moment that was defining and pivotal in her life. Turns out she did have trauma and grief, but the body does what it does. It had buried it, but she made all these amazing discoveries about her life, and there was tons of value in that. But she had talked herself into the fact that based on what she was hearing around her, none of her stories were worthy.
Well, I'll confess, the first time I came to one of the events to work with your team, I thought, what can I offer these military veterans? I've never been in the military. Yeah, my family's a military family. And I was intimidated until Chris told that story. And it's like, oh, I get it now. I can definitely help.
100%. Third one. Nobody wants to hear my story.
Curse of knowledge.
What do you mean?
The curse of knowledge is I lived my story. A lot of people, like I actually wasn't near-death experience, but I survived it. I don't think anything of it. I didn't have an epiphany and change my life because I almost died because of a sepsis. So we think we lived it. It's no big deal. And where I learned this, Scott, was from my mother. My mother was born into German-occupied France during World War II.
Wow.
And she would tell me these stories of how my grandparents would take their 2 little girls and walk half a mile into the nearby town to see if they could just get potatoes that had fallen off the supply trucks from the German soldiers, just so it could have a potato to make soup that day. And this all kinds of stories like this. And I'm sitting here listening to her in my fully air-conditioned home, a half a mile from a 24-hour grocery store. I cannot relate to this story. And I said, Mom, how did Grandma and Grandpa do that? How did they survive? She looked at me for the longest time. She said, it's just what we did.
Yeah.
She did not see the extraordinary power of that experience for all the people in France. And that's why we discount our stories. We can't see the value.
We had Alicia Perkins, on the podcast, and she was at the event this weekend. And, I've been working with her. You're starting to work with her. She was blown 500 feet from her vehicle, the only survivor, cut in half, could see inside her pelvis. Isolated herself from the world for 10 years. A failed duck dog named Toby saved her life. She had 3 bouts with cancer, to include most recently colon cancer.
Yeah.
And now she trains and puts service dogs into the world to help other veterans and first responders. And she said to me, I just don't know why anyone would want to hear my story. And I was floored, but the curse of knowledge, right? Doesn't everybody go through this, you know? And the reality is, no, they don't. And it is what's personal is universal because of what your lived experience was. If you're willing to be generous and repurpose it in the service of others, it has immense value, and it always will.
It just occurred to me, Scott, I've been listening to the book about Jim Gant, your friend Jim Gant.
Yeah. American Spartan.
Yeah. There was a line in that book that stuck out to me about a lot of soldiers, is that a lot of them go into the military because they're looking for something.
Yeah.
And it just occurred to me when we're talking about perk is that underneath that story, and I heard this more than once this weekend, I was told when I was a kid that I'm not very valuable. My story, you're not worth sticking around for. So we've got that story underneath all this that's saying, okay, you went through all this, but who wants to listen to you? You don't have any value. That's the story many of us adopt as children. That underlies all of this.
Yeah. Which takes us back to that whole, power trio thing. Is it starts with the story you tell yourself.
It absolutely does.
And we have to get clear on what am I telling myself now? And this is something that Matt, our executive producer, and I are talking about all the time because we both have these old 8 tracks that play in our head, and we all do, right? I mean, we all have some version of that. But the trick, and I think the essence here is to get as granular and specific on what that false narrative is and to really name it, right? Then frame it so we can tame it with a story that is something that is far more accurate and real.
And it's not easy. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. It took me 59 years to realize the story that was underneath everything in me. And I've been asking for most of my adult life, what's going on?
But we're not relegated to that 59 years, are we?
We're not.
If we get intentional about the work,
that's exactly it.
Then we can find it quicker.
Yeah. I want my long road to be your shortcut because if you get very specific, what could be? What are some things I remember? What could a lesson be that I heard? Because I don't think anybody told me you're not worth sticking around for. Something happened when I was 2 or 3 years old. Okay, my daddy left me, so I must not be worth much.
Yeah.
Because children adopt those messages.
Yeah, they do.
So ask yourself, not necessarily what was said, because you may never know that, but what could have been a message, and that might open it up for you.
Yeah, something else that I found in my Generosity of Scars work is the 2 best scar stories. The second best is the story you don't want to tell others, and the best scar story, the most impactful, is the one you don't want to tell yourself.
That's right.
So there's probably some symbiosis.
There probably is something in there that I didn't want to hear the truth.
Yeah. So what did we not cover, Michael, in the realm? I mean, there's a lot more to talk about. I want to bring you back on, and we'll take on some different things. Like I'd love to do a whole segment on struggle.
Sure, I would love to.
But for today, just at the general high level, what did we not talk about that we should, or what would you say to people out there who are struggling with their story right now and wondering like what they even do next?
I think the biggest is that a story has to be a Hollywood production. I've got to lay it out, and we talk about frameworks and we work with that, but one of the
it's got to be polished.
Yep. Get rid of polish. You don't want to be polished. It's thinking I've got to have this narrative. I hear this all the time. I want you to help me with my story, but I'm waiting till I get it to a certain level. No, that's the worst thing you can do because you're going to take all the soul right out of it.
You're going to self-edit it into a diluted, like opaque, homogenized.
I couldn't put it better myself. It just takes all the soul out of it.
Yeah.
So just tell the story. We have too much technology now where you can't just pick up your phone and start voice recording. Have it transcribed for you.
Why not just have AI write it, Michael?
Well, because AI is so intuitive. Heck, I can't even get it to give me the right page number when I'm having it edit my book.
I've had this conversation, and my take on it is like with AI, having AI do searches of things and things like that, cool. But when it comes to the creative side of writing our stories, particularly our backstory or our scar story, one of the reasons I have a big problem with it is not only is it, you're surrendering your agency to a friggin' machine on your story, on what makes sense in your life, But when you go through storytelling, you go through your own hero's journey. We saw it this weekend where people they're in the belly of the whale, so to speak. They're struggling to put their story into the world. A cancer survivor is trying to say, I think I'm still in it right now. And they're sense making.
Yeah.
If you have an AI platform write your story, then you are outsourcing the sense making. You're outsourcing the physical work that the body needs to actually come into alignment with this. So even if the most beautiful story gets written, your body has not had the chance to go through the primal process of integrating and aligning with the story. And my thinking is that's like somebody just handing you your story and saying, here you go. You know, the preponderance of your instrument was cheated out of it.
Oh,
and it's going to phone it in, and your body's going to betray you when you tell it.
Well, I'm thinking of Jennifer last night at the fire pit. She came to me she wrote a brand new story right after dinner before the fire pit. And the first time she told it, she couldn't get through the first 3 lines. It was so heavily for her. And she tried to power through speaking, and I could barely understand what she was saying. So I said, I love what you're doing. Now, you're going to tell it again, but when the emotion hits, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And she told it around the fire when we broke into groups, and she got through it. She didn't have that struggle. She stopped, took a breath. We didn't desert her emotionally, and she got through. AI could never do that.
Right. And that's emotional resonance is necessary for influence. So if you take that part out of it, you can't show up that way.
You can't.
Yeah.
It's robotic. So
anything else?
Well, I've got something for you that would be part of the, since we're on storytelling, and I want to talk dads for a minute. I normally would wear a collared shirt for this kind of interview.
But dude, look at the shirt you're in.
This shirt means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to you
Sure
because
does.
the man who gave you this message, Rex Mann, it means a lot to me that he sat in this chair near the end of his life. It's an honor to sit in the same chair and to wear this shirt. But I know how important he was to you, and he was to me too because of his TED Talk. A few years ago, my dad wrote this story about his dad, who was a pilot in World War II. He flew a P-47 Thunderbolt.
Oh, wow.
It's like a flying tank. And I want to share this. I'd love to have this be part of the wall somehow to honor him. And not only him, but the 377th that he flew with. There's a picture in the back of his squadron.
Oh, man, that's fantastic.
Now,
okay.
Here's my favorite picture. My grandpa was a badass when it came to flying. This is a picture of a plane. You can barely see it probably on camera. This is a plane that's missing the wingtips and the tail. The story behind this is he got shot up on a mission. He was flying back to his base in England, and he couldn't get over the treetops to go down into the valley. So the wingtips get clipped off, the tail, and he still landed this thing. All he suffered was a broken leg. But I have so much admiration for all of our warriors, and especially pilots. But this is his story, and it would mean a lot to me and my family just to be part of that wall. So,
dude, this is amazing. And so this was your granddad?
Granted. Artemus Davis.
Artemus Davis. Yeah. All right. So what Montel and I will do is I think probably what we'll do is we'll burn a copy of this and we'll cut this picture.
That'd be whatever.
And then we've got pictures like that posted to the wall.
Great.
And in our World War II section, that will be amazing, man. Thank you. And I will absolutely read this too. I can't wait to read this.
Yeah, my grandpa was my dad's hero, just like Rex is your hero. And he had so much love. And he didn't write that just for his dad. He wrote it for his whole squad.
Dude.
Because that's how grandpa was.
And that's what stories do for us. Tim O'Brien, in the things they carried about the Vietnam War, he said stories are for those late hours in the night when we can't remember how we got from where we were to where we are now, for when memories are erased and there's nothing left to remember except the story. Love that kind of thing. That's how we remember our war fighters and so thank you. That means a lot. And it will find a home on the wall, I can guarantee you. We have a few things for you. First of all, your official Scott Mann Yeti.
Oh, I love that.
Yep. And then let me do this one first. This is, you may have seen the pen that you signed the book out front, but this is called a bullet pen. And this is made by a Gold Star dad. His name is Jeff Falkel.
Okay.
His son, Chris Jr. Falkel, was killed in Afghanistan. And Junior and his dad, Jeff, would always make things out of shell casings in their garage with their tools. but they could never figure out a pin. So when Junior was killed, Jeff went out into the garage and he basically stayed out there until he figured out how to make those pins. And they're called pins with purpose or bullet pins. It's a very, very special gift from a Gold Star dad. So that's our gift to you. Make sure you put that in your checked luggage, not in your carry-on. Or TSA will have a bullet pin.
Okay, all right. This means a lot to me because of the work I did with Holly.
Yeah, man.
Getting to know her. So thank you.
Our Gold Stars and our families of the fallen are they're a national treasure, right?
They are.
This is another one that I think you'll really like. This is a handmade leather wallet by our executive producer, Matt Williams, who is a former agency case officer. Anxious for you to meet him at some point. He's one of my dearest friends. All the materials are sourced in the United States. He even has a cowboy sewing machine that he sews these by hand. It says Scott Mann Podcast on the back, but just a really slick, badass looking wallet. And his company is Gravel Drive because he's all about old school and getting back to our human nature. So
this means a lot. I'll tell you why, because I didn't want to bring my wallet on this trip, so I've got a rubber band around on my credit card.
Well, shit.
Matt, you rock. How could you know? I love this.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
All right,
Thank you.
You'll have
Thank
to send
you,
us a
my
picture
friend.
of it. All right,
Appreciate that.
well, listen, Michael, thank you for being with us, man.
you,
As
man.
always, thank you for what you do for our military and our war fighters to help them find their story. You're amazing, and I'm honored to be on the storytelling journey with you, man. You'll come back, right?
Oh, absolutely. You cannot get rid of me.
All right, buddy.
Sorry, my friend.
All right. So, everybody, thank you so much for being part of this podcast. We're going to try to get into more and more of the Storytelling Human Connection podcast. That's really where we're driving because, frankly, that's where leadership lives, and that's what the country and the world needs is leaders like you that are building that amazing skill set, that bottom-up skill set of the old school interpersonal skills to authentically influence people by gaining and holding attention and resonating emotionally. And that is storytelling. Nobody better than the Story MD to show us how to do that. If this episode was helpful, share it with somebody that could use it. Make sure you subscribe, give us a rating, and help us grow this really important platform from the grassroots. All right? I'll see you next time, and I'll see you on the rooftop.